It's not often we get to do an update video this soon after posting something, but not long after the last Ernest video came out, we were lucky enough to get sent in the right direction to find out that there was, in fact, a reading of some of the Ernest Goes to the WWF script by the Ernest P. Worrell Preservation Society. And even better, there were actually 2 scripts. One of them even being pitched for what seems to be the early 90s. So a quick refresher if you didn't see the last video, even though you definitely should see the story of Ernest the Furnace, there were posts on social media of a script for Ernest doing a collaboration with the WWF and the USA Network. It was assumed to be a TV movie. It was from around 1998. The entire idea fascinated me, and I really wanted to see what the scripts were about, and others in the comments did as well. One person from the Preservation Society was kind enough to comment, and with the help of another commenter, we were handed the treasure map and we were on our way. The Ernest Preservation Society has a podcast, and they do script readings on it, and the WWF script had been given such a reading. Obviously, they'll go into more depth there, and they are the main source for the only information about this, so make sure to go give them a listen if this really interests you. The 2 scripts had the titles, The Mighty Ernest and Ernest on the Ropes. The Mighty Ernest was the one that was from around the early to mid-90s and would put Ernest into the world of wrestling. We unfortunately do not have a writer for the first story, but it's still worth reading. The script for The Mighty Ernest opens with a wrestling event happening and the cast of Ernest characters being in the audience and commenting on the wrestling. In the ring is the undefeated champion that the script refers to as the Beast.
Enter superfan Ernest, loaded down with all sorts of wrestling souvenirs and junk food.
I like this imagery too.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just picturing...
He's got a luchador mask.
Oh.
A denim one, obviously.
Yes, of course.
Following close behind is his 12-year-old pal, Josh Everett. We even get a last name.
Yeah, that's odd.
They splash, spill, and bump through the crowd to their choice ringside seats. Now, here's what's confusing, though, is they're just now showing up, but if the Beast is wrestling and he's the undefeated champ, shouldn't that be the main event?
Don't read too much into this.
All right. As a old school wrestling fan, I'm just saying the champ's not going to wrestle at the
This
front
is the main
half of
card.
the
Yeah.
So anyways, as the next match begins, Ernest brags about his days as a wrestler. Josh is enthralled. When the action spills outside the ring in front of them, Ernest starts to offer advice to the wrestlers, pointing out what they're doing wrong. They decide to teach him a lesson and both take off after him, much to the crowd's delight.
The first thing that jumps out to me was that Ernest is referred to as being a wrestler in his past in the script, even being comfortable enough to lend the wrestlers advice when they were thrown out onto the outside of the ring. This would result in them chasing him out of sight and the crowd cheering it on. It's a slight change from just being a huge fan, but there are way weirder holes in the Ernest universe than that. Or maybe Ernest the Furnace is canon now.
So they're going to cut to Pops and Auntie Nelda reacting to Ernest
all the
getting
reactions.
chasing.
Yeah.
Through a series of gags, Ernest comically avoids the wrestlers. Ernest ends up ass over tea kettle in the concession stand. The wrestlers laugh and resume their match. Ernest rises from the rubble with a cotton candy beehive, onion ring earrings, lemon slices for eyes, and hot dogs for lips. Noticing the commotion from backstage is Victor Van Owen, the wrestling promoter, accompanied by his bookish assistant, a JJ. Ernest and Josh walk towards the arena exit, Ernest bragging about his performance. The camera pulls back to reveal them escorted by a pair of security
So they're being
guards.
taken out because of Ernest's shenanigans.
Yes.
So they get there just in time for the final match and then leave or escorted out before it's even over.
Yep, pretty much.
Oh, boy.
Whap, whap.
Yeah.
The wrestlers chase him off until he flips over the concession stand and resurfaces covered in food.
We now meet Rebecca Everett, an attractive woman in her mid-30s working at a diner. This is Josh's mom. Josh is washing the dishes. She didn't approve of him watching wrestling with Ernest, and Ernest is actually late for work as well. Rebecca is approached by Nick the Moose Rivers while trying to work. He's a small-time loan shark who holds her late husband's loan on the diner. He apparently always has a piece of red licorice with him, which I thought was a weird trademark to have.
I could see it.
So this Rivers guy, he's the bad guy, or one of the bad guys of this production anyhow. He hassles Rebecca about her payment, suggesting that there are other ways that she can make good, making this sexual right away. So, I don't
It
know.
ain't an unproduced script if it ain't got...
A little lecherous.
And that's just the beginning of it, by the way.
Yes.
Josh attempts to intervene, but is roughly shoved aside by Rivers. Josh tells him that he wouldn't do that if Ernest were here. Rivers laughs, gives Rebecca a big leer and a pat on the ass as he leaves. Josh comforts his mom with a hug.
Ernest shows up to deliver some eggs to the diner, and as he does, the bad guy makes sure to bully Ernest and break his eggs one by one on his head. Ernest walks in, covered in eggs, and starts to do his work while cleaning all of the eggs off of himself. Ernest and his friends see a banner for an autograph signing with the wrestlers, and they really want to go. Ernest, not wanting to get in trouble with the boy's mother again, reminds him that she has a rule against going to wrestling events. The boy quickly counters that it's not a wrestling event, it's just an autograph signing.
Josh reminds him that she said he couldn't go to wrestling. This is just wrestlers, and she never said anything about that. The easily bewildered Ernest concedes that point, and they quickly pull into the mall parking lot. As he and Josh make their way to the wrestlers, Ernest tells him tall tales of his own wrestling exploits. Josh is eating it up until he spies some wrestling stars and rushes off to get their autographs. Ernest stumbles across the Beast, locked in a steel cage.
With the Beast trapped in a cage, Ernest talks smack to it and taunts him to the delight of his friend. Right as it seems that the Beast is about to break through the bars and snatch Ernest, the Beast manager comes in to make a big announcement.
So the manager introduces the caged Beast, building up the champ. He complains that he has been undefeated for 2 years and they're running out of challengers. So he demands that promoter Victor Van Owen find a worthy opponent. Van Owen storms the stage, proclaiming that is exactly what he plans to do. Since no other pro wrestler has been able to beat the champion, he announces a search to find the one man out there who can challenge the Beast at the next month's pay-per-view event. Anyone can sign up, and all the applicants will be screened for the one true everyman hero who will attempt to dethrone the Beast and win a $50,000 purse in the bargain. Now that's $50,000 of money, not a purse valued at $50,000.
That's a
just for
fancy,
clarity's
fancy
sake.
purse.
This opens the door wide open for Ernest in his friend's eyes, and at that point he begins to try to convince Ernest to join the competition to face the Beast. Ernest, on the other hand, is now quite reluctant to take the offer and rifles off several excuses as to why he shouldn't take part in the competition. The script calls for the boy to ignore this and begin acting like a wrestling manager and cutting a promo about Ernest to the crowd around them, boistering the legend of Ernest the Furnace. So much that the crowd is now calling for Ernest to join the competition by chanting his name and drowning out any of his objections. In an attempt to not look bad in front of the boy, Ernest signs up and the crowd cheers him on.
All right. Interior, diner, day. The phone rings, but both Ernest and Rebecca are too busy to answer. Josh takes the call. It is the Wrestling Federation announcing that Ernest has been chosen. An excited Josh broadcasts this news to the entire diner. Rebecca is against the entire idea and strongly expresses her opinion. A nervous Ernest quickly latches onto this as a way out. However, Josh and the diner patrons make a big deal out of this, and before too long, his ego gets the better of him and he agrees to proceed.
Ernest is shuffling around the back, trying to shake hands with the various wrestlers, and this is the part where, depending on when it was, this would be full of cameos with wrestlers from the time.
Ernest mills around backstage before the press conference. He hangs around with the wrestlers, desperately trying to be, quote-unquote, one of the boys. One superstar after another shoots him down.
The promoter grabs Ernest during this to shuffle him out and meet the media, introducing him as the man who will defeat the Beast to jeers from the media. Ernest and Josh try to make their case, but that isn't needed as a new character enters the story.
Van Owen steps in and pushes Josh away, reminiscent of Rivers shoving Josh at the diner earlier. Van Owen quickly introduces a superstar from days gone by, Duffy O'Hagan, who was known as the fearsome Irish buzzsaw. The shabbily dressed man from the diner enters. He is considerably tidier than our previous view of him. Van Owen states that O'Hagan will train Ernest and impart his vast wrestling knowledge and tactics. The reporters respond with another barrage of questions as a shunned Josh looks on. Van Owen takes the opportunity to plug the big pay-per-view match between Ernest and the Beast.
The new trainer explains that he doesn't think that Ernest can be trained and will just end up hurting himself, and is quickly put in his place and told he can be replaced and be back to the rags he was in before if he doesn't want to do the job.
Interior diner day. Rivers, with the squirrel feeding him his supply of licorice, leans on Rebecca.
Sorry, the way that reads, it's just a little...
Right? He's just like sticking a piece up there. She protests that she makes her payment every week. Rivers tells her that due to unexpected setbacks in his operation, he must unfortunately call for immediate repayment of the entire loan, $25,000. Rebecca tells him that she can't come up with that kind of money. Rivers turns cold as ice as he tells her that she has 2 weeks to pay off the loan. He turns creepy smooth when he adds that if she can't come up with the money, other arrangements will have to be made.
Ernest and Duffy the trainer are at the doctor's office, and Ernest doesn't know why. Duffy explains to Ernest that he has to be certified as fit enough to wrestle the Beast, and in order to do that, he has to be ran through a physical. There would be several smaller skits here that would each lead to more destruction and damage to Ernest until it eventually ends with the facility in ruin and Ernest being wheeled out in a full body cast.
Interior gym. After Ernest is unable to do even the most simple exercise, Duffy begins his training with the basics.
Weird enough, the first thing Ernest is taught is how to fall down. Eventually, he takes something called the dumpster drop, where he is pushed off a ladder into a full dumpster. Very CZW. But this is one bump Ernest has taken many times. Both men's training is shown with the Beast tearing up a stuffed animal dressed like Ernest, and Ernest not being able to last more than a minute or two on a stationary bike. Ernest breaks the knobs on the bike, and the bike breaks free through the gym and ends with him landing in several weights before a montage plays showing Ernest begin to get progressively more competent. The only issue is that the equipment is all rigged to make Ernest seem like a superstar. It impresses Josh, and now both he and Ernest are completely confident in their ability to take down the Beast. Duffy knows the truth and feels bad about it, but is still weighing that he needs his job more than he needs Ernest to be safe.
So Rebecca is now busy at the diner. Ernest isn't there to help because he's training. Josh is defending him and says he'll pick up the slack. Rebecca softens, hugs her son, only to be interrupted again by Rivers.
Rivers.
He's asking about the money again. She still has a week left to get the funds.
You're welcome.
The Mighty Ernest is taking on all comers in his last big training session. Duffy shouts instruction and encouragement from ringside as Josh looks on in wonder. With the first opponent, Ernest goes for the standard collar and elbow lockup and pulls the wrestler into a poor excuse for a headlock. Duffy gives him the thumbs up, and Ernest balls his fist and lets it fly. The wrestler barely winces, but looks over to Van Owen, who gives him the thumbs down, so the wrestler rolls his eye and does an exaggerated backsplash. Ernest looks at his fist in amazement. So they're basically, again, just working his ego and making him think that he's way better.
Yeah.
You can dream it, you can be it.
Than he is, that's right. Duffy shouts for him to go for the pin. Ernest lands on top of the fallen wrestler, looking like a toothpick on a hoagie roll. The referee quickly counts 3. Ernest jumps up and raises his arms in victory, and with a camera flash, the scene is frozen and becomes the cover photo on a wrestling fan magazine.
The Ernest wrestling world continues to fall in love with Ernest, even with the clear setups, and the script calls for another montage of Ernest defeating opponents while the media and fans sing his praises. Ernest begins to hang out with celebrities, beautiful women, and socialites, leading him to ignoring Josh for his new crowd. Josh and his mother are locking up the diner when the loan shark shows back up and pushes his way in with his squirrel, saying that he is tired of waiting. He motions, and his workers file in with paint to redo the place. The mother protests and is met with Rivers, asking who is going to stop him before Ernest kicks in the door and declares himself the one to stop Rivers. He challenges him to a fight, with Rivers laughing, and says he will put up the family's half against the loan shark's half. Winner takes all in a fight. Suddenly, the loan shark is seeming afraid of Ernest and is trying to talk him into any other kind of competition. But Ernest isn't having it and begins to walk him down.
So Duffy tells Van Owen he's still concerned about Ernest. This is Duffy's story arc. I'm concerned about Ernest, and that's really all that kind of happens.
Duffy O'Hagan,
Yeah.
a man concerned.
They pay him off and send him on his way. Meanwhile, at the diner, Ernest is getting beat up by Rivers, and Josh and Rebecca watch in horror.
Horror.
I like the phrase, he beats Ernest from pillar to post, really taking him to task.
Yes.
Sounds like.
He's really destroying that diner he's going to take over.
We go back to Duffy, and he's in a bar, and he asks for 12 shots to be lined up for himself from the bartender. As the bartender is fulfilling his request, Duffy sees a poster for the upcoming wrestling event, and when the bartender turns back around, Duffy has disappeared, but he left a wad of money to pay his bill. Very classy. The movie rejoins Ernest in a pile of garbage being taunted by Rivers behind the diner. This leads to Rivers declaring himself the winner.
Complaining that he can't hold Ernest up and kick his ass at the same time, he declares himself the winner. He tells Ernest to collect his crap and get out. Rivers calmly...
Licorice me.
Here you go.
He informs Rebecca that she now works for him. Josh bursts into tears and runs inside the diner. He snaps his fingers and Squirrel hands him an envelope. He hands it to Rebecca. "It's your new uniform. Try it on. Now." He shouts at the workers to get busy on the place. A battered and bruised Ernest, his scuffed suitcase in hand, passes the front of the diner. The workers hoot and catcall. Ernest looks in the front window. Through swollen eyes, he sees a humiliated Rebecca modeling her new, quote, uniform. A skimpy French-made outfit with frilled panties and fishnet stockings. His attention is diverted as the front door swings open. It's Josh. He stares coldly at Ernest. Before Ernest can say a word, Josh turns and slams the door. The workers laugh as Ernest walks away. As he disappears, Josh's face appears in the window, sadly watching him.
Ernest, defeated and feeling like the worst, hitchhikes but is picked up by Duffy. After explaining what happened at the diner, Duffy takes him back to his house and begins to show him his scrapbook to try to instill into Ernest that even though he was a legendary wrestler, he was never big or strong. He was just smart and had the heart to win.
He asks Ernest what he really wants, and Ernest says he wants everything to be the way it was. And Duffy asks what it would take for that to happen, and Ernest tells him $50,000 so he could buy that diner back. Duffy points out that neither of them have that much money, but the prize for beating the Beast in the wrestling match is just that amount. So Ernest,
what?
It's perfect, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a perfect amount. Ernest protests that he doesn't want to be a wrestler anymore, so Duffy tells him that the only way not to be a wrestler is to be a wrestler for one night.
One night.
Oh, okay.
Ernest signed a contract with Van Owen and has to wrestle. Ernest frets over the Beast. Of course, he sounds like a very imposing person. Of course he would. Duffy tells him not to worry about the Beast and that the Beast's real name is Bob. And Duffy says, I taught him everything he knows, but I didn't teach him everything that I know. Oh. So there's some things that Duffy can still tell and teach someone else that Beast might not know.
This old cat still got some moves.
A few tricks up his sleeve. Let's see here.
The Irish buzzsaw.
He admits he didn't train him seriously at first. Van Owen wouldn't allow it, but he will now.
After all these revelations, Duffy tells Ernest that if he will trust him, he will train him for real this time. Duffy tells him that he lacks the physical gifts to fight with the beast, but he can teach him his finishing hold, the Irish lullaby.
Ernest protests that they only have 1 day to do this, so Duffy levels with him, telling him that he has no strength, no speed, and no talent. So all these things that they had built Ernest up to think that he has, he's pretty much saying, you don't have any of those things.
You have none of them.
It was all BS, friend. He says, but he does have Duffy. You got me, pal. He says Duffy's going to teach him his secret finishing hold, the Irish lullaby, which is it's a nicely named.
Picturing Morrissey from the Smiths.
Lay your head down and go sweetly to sleep.
The world's fastest sleeper hold. Ernest gulps and agrees. Duffy shows him the hold, and as soon as he touches Ernest, Ernest falls into a deep sleep. Duffy covers him with a blanket and turns out the light. I feel like if you had 1 day, you probably wouldn't want to put the person that you're training into a very deep sleep.
Yeah.
After using the finisher to put Ernest to sleep, we are sent to the arena for what seems to be the final showdown. The place is sold out, and our evil promoter walks up and shakes the check in Ernest's face while wishing him good luck.
The arena is packed. JJ is in the back taunting the beast in his cage. Ernest and Duffy arrive. Van Owen shows him the check for $50K and wishes him good luck. Duffy exchanges some words with Van Owen before they head out. Ernest's entrance music starts and the crowd goes wild.
Ernest makes his entrance to a roaring crowd and does an interview, much more humble and focused than before. The scene would flip back to show the diner and Ernest promo playing on the big screen.
The same scene plays on the big screen TV at the remodeled diner. Didn't take long. Rivers and Squirrel. See, I don't know why they keep calling him Rivers, because they called him Moose earlier, and then Squirrel. They just...
You think you'd want to keep calling him Moose and Squirrel to really drive it home. I don't know.
They sit at a card table watching the match with several cronies. They hoot and holler, throwing things at the screen. Rivers can't believe Ernest is going through with the match. He tells Squirrel, call his bookie, triple the bet. Josh, helping Rebecca in the kitchen, which, depending upon what she's making, that could be very dangerous with all that flesh displayed. Peers over the counter at the TV. Rivers calls for Rebecca, telling her to hurry up with the food and to treat his friends extra special. As the interview concludes, Ernest looks dead into the camera and says that he wants to say something to his best friend if he's watching. This one's for you, Josh. Rivers and his pals hoot again. Rebecca stares at the screen. Oh, Ernest. She hears the door slam, knowing Josh has left for the arena. Rivers makes another crack, and Rebecca dumps her tray on his head and runs after her son.
The scene flips back to the arena, and Ernest and the Beast are about to begin their bout.
So the crowd erupts with boos and catcalls as the Beast is led to the ring, showered by popcorn and programs. Waste of popcorn. As he steps on the ring apron opposite Ernest, the Beast lets loose a gigantic roar. The resultant wind blows Ernest's hat off and sets his jowls a-flappin'. He folds like a cheap suit, fainting dead away.
The bell rings to start the match. Duffy yells encouragement to Ernest, who is instantly clobbered and stumbles back into his corner. Duffy again pumps him up and sends him back out. The Beast snatches him up, twirls him over the head, and throws him back at Duffy. Ernest lands upside down on the turnbuckle, jabbering and mumbling.
Upside down the turnbuckle would be funny to be thrown into. The tree of woe, as it were.
Yeah.
He manages to tell Duffy that he just doesn't feel it. Duffy repeats his mantra about heart and tells him to remember what he's doing it for. He tells him that he can do it. Ernest hears another small voice repeating the same phrase. He turns to see Josh staring up at him. Josh tells him that since he mentioned his name on TV, he'll look like a jerk if Ernest loses. Ernest backflips off the turnbuckle to the delight of the crowd. He acknowledges the fan support and goes to work against the big man. Van Owen watches from ringside screaming, "Get him!" When he notices the fans watching him, he sheepishly adds, "Ernest." thus being, get him!
Yeah. ...
Ernest.
Right.
Not to look like a fool. Ernest looks for an opening to apply the sleeper, but every time he gets close, the beast tosses him away. He looks over to Duffy for assistance. Their series of shrugs and signals turns into a full-blown game of charades. The beast has had enough. He grabs the distracted Ernest and flings him into the ropes. Ernest becomes a rubbery human ricochet bouncing between the ropes, picking up speed as he goes. This would be hilarious.
I can see that. Rebecca rushes to Duffy and Josh, joining them at ringside. Security tries to escort her out, but she wheels on them. Back off, man. That's my grill cook. That's a big line.
So she's now the manager, like Miss Elizabeth style,
right,
in the maid outfit for Ernest.
Oh, mercy.
I don't think she changed. She took off after the kid. I love it.
In the ring, the beast times his move and extends his beefy arm into Ernest's path, giving him what I would imagine is a standing lariat.
Oh, yeah. Stan Hansen style.
Ernest's chin connects and he spins like a dying propeller around the big man's forearm, and as he stops spinning, the beast viciously body slams Ernest several times.
Not once, not twice.
Thrice.
But at least thrice, thus making it several.
Rebecca, Josh, and Duffy wince at each impact. Rebecca jumps into the ring apron and calls to Ernest. Still in her French maid outfit, the crowd cheers her. This is
of course they do.
In between slams, Ernest gives her a smile and a pathetic little wave. Rebecca becomes part of the show and screams at him to kill the beast. Rivers, Squirrel, and the boys muscle their way past the fans to ringside. Rivers laughs and gloats that they got there just in time to watch the big man roll in his kill. The beast picks up Ernest by the back of the neck and the waistband of his trunks and drives him towards the turnbuckle. Everybody closes their eyes as they anticipate the worst. Ernest doesn't close his eyes. As he approaches the corner, he stair-steps up the turnbuckles and flips over the beast's head and onto his back. The crowd roars. Ernest looks around and tells Duffy that he can see his dressing room from here, so he's got time for a dumb comment while he's up there. It's pretty funny. Duffy yells, "Now!" Ernest replies that he can't see a cow, which is ridiculous. Okay. And then Duffy yells "now" again and tells Ernest to apply the sleeper, the Irish lullaby as it were, and Ernest does.
The beast attempts to shake Ernest off. He flails and bucks wildly, with Ernest holding on for dear life. Duffy, Josh, and Rebecca all scream encouragement from ringside. Rivers' jaw drops. He is about to lose a large chunk of money. He tells Squirrel to call the bookie and cancel the bets. You can't do that.
Can't do that mid-bout.
Rivers should know that.
There's no givesies.
As a loan shark.
Loan shark, yeah, that's 101. Yeah, dumb
Squirrel's
fool.
like, yeah, it's too late. Rivers jumps the security railing, pushes the timekeeper from his folding chair, picks it up, and heads to the ring with Squirrel a step behind. Ernest, clinging to the now wobbly beast like a tick to a hound dog, is dangling over the top rope. The beast is on Queer Street.
All right.
He slumps to his knees.
Edit that out.
Ernest still holding on. Then, like a mighty oak, the beast topples face forward, unconscious. With great effort, Ernest rolls him over and covers him for the pin. Duffy, Josh, and Rebecca all hold their breath. Rivers is screaming his displeasure. A stricken Van Owen can only mutely stare at what has transpired. The referee drops to the canvas to begin that count. The audience falls silent. 1, 2. The referee pauses and looks to Van Owen, shrugs, and slaps the canvas for a 3 count. Duffy, Josh, Rebecca all leap into the ring. They crowd around Ernest, whose arm is being held aloft in victory by the referee. The ring announcer hands Ernest the $50,000 check and holds the championship belt aloft, showing it to the frenzied crowd. Ernest hands the check to Rebecca, telling her she can use it to buy the diner back. But now that he's broke again, he wants to know if he can have his job back. Rebecca smiles and gives him a hug. Still in the maid outfit, mind you.
Right.
Josh beams with pride.
I'd give her a hug on the maid outfit.
Right? So Rivers steps through the ropes. Rebecca hands him the check. Again,
wrong.
Now it's not a third-party check. It's another
It's a mess.
level.
What it is a mess.
Yeah, telling him that now they are square. Rivers pays no attention, but instead confronts Ernest. He tells him he lost everything because of Ernest. Why couldn't he continue to be a loser like he always has been? Josh tells him that Ernest beat the undefeated champion, won $50,000, and is in possession of a 25-pound gold belt. Rivers has nothing. He asks who the real loser is. You tell him, Josh. Rivers snaps and shoves Josh to the canvas. He grabs Ernest and cocks his fist, but before he can strike, Rebecca unleashes a brief but savage flurry of maneuvers that sends Rivers hurtling over the top rope and crashing down on the just recovering squirrel. Clearly unhappy but ever phony Van Owen congratulates Ernest as the people's champion. As he exits, Duffy spins him around. He tells Van Owen that he got what he deserved. Van Owen tells Duffy he'll get what he deserves. You fired. Duffy smiles. Van Owen sticks his chin out and asks what he's going to do about it. Me? Nothing, Duffy tells him. Duffy turns and looks down at the fallen beast. Bob, he calls. The beast raises his big head. Yeah, Dad?
Uh-oh.
Duffy tells him to take out the trash, indicating Van Owen.
Big reveal.
The beast stands up and rumbles towards Van Owen. The only word to escape Van Owen's trembling lips as the big man approaches is a feeble, Bob? The beast raises Van Owen over his head and throws him from the ring onto the pile of Rivers and Squirrel. The beast snaps his head in JJ's direction. JJ gives a timid little smile and throws himself from the ring, landing on the ever-growing pile of bad guys. The crowd begins to chant Ernest's name. Duffy and the beast, flanked by Josh and Rebecca, raise Ernest to their shoulders. Ernest acknowledges the crowd. So the beast just turned face.
Yeah, in front of a crowd.
In front of a crowd, like he's a good guy now.
Yeah.
So Ernest acknowledges the crowd, waving and saluting. This whips them into an even bigger frenzy. The beast hands Ernest the championship belt. Ernest struggles to raise the belt high over his head. He succeeds for just a moment before the belt's weight takes him crashing backwards out of frame.
The story is pretty solid for an Ernest script. It has points where it can certainly be better. But this, for the most part, is a fine story of Ernest becoming a wrestler. And honestly, it has a few nice spots of character growth. Even if I think the loan shark bad guy would have likely been toned down before this was put to film. Ernest has his moments of comedy as well, and his moments of getting lost in the fame and getting brought back down to earth to help his friends and save the day like the Ernest we all know and love. This one I can solidly rate as being a perfectly fine Ernest story, and I'm kind of sad we didn't get at least some version of it. I don't spend a lot of time thinking who has to play who, but in my mind the entire time, the only person I saw as the Beast character was John Tenta. The Earthquake, to me, sounded like the perfect guy to play the Beast. My only worry is that from what it sounded like, Moose and Squirrel were the only spots where I could see to put Chuck and Bobby for characters, and I'm not sure if I would enjoy them in antagonist roles. Now, with that example explained, we now move on to what some of us were afraid of. The other script, the one that was sent off to the WWF during the Attitude Era. If you remember, this is the one that was posted to Twitter and started this whole situation. Giving the benefit of the doubt to things, the other script wasn't the worst thing in the world, and maybe this is just an instance of needing to give the story a chance. The first thing about this one is it's made by a group called Coast Entertainment. Only one name was available of the two writers, and one was Jeff Pillars, who had no clue about the writing of the story. To be fair to the man, it's an unmade script from almost 30 years ago. Can't really expect too much, but we do at least have a name to credit the idea to. This is a little different from the last story, as all we have is a synopsis of the story, no official script. The story would begin with Ernest starting an amateur wrestling team for his friends, who are all misfits. In my mind, I'm seeing a similar setup to Ernest Goes to Camp, especially given it being the time period it was in.
Ernest, a rabid pro wrestling fan and assistant at the local community youth center, reluctantly agrees to coach a group of his young pals in a newly formed Pee Wee Wrestling League. Misfits, all. They have been passed over by all the other teams, so they form their own with Ernest as the mentor. The best prospects have been selected and will be coached by Blackjack Muldoon, a former professional wrestling bad guy. Muldoon is intense and runs his team in a win-at-all-costs style, showing them highlights of his old wrestling brawls for training. He is so single-minded that he refuses to pick his own son Jimmy for his team.
Good setup. It's a good setup.
Yeah. Jimmy, nicknamed Peepers, due to his thick glasses, is welcomed on his pal Ernest's team. Although not quite good enough to actually wrestle, he quickly becomes the team's manager and chief cheerleader. Not to mention the coach's indispensable right-hand man, smoothing over Ernest's many comic bumblings and catastrophes.
That's a good give and take there, right? Ernest, the grown adult, being the bumbling, clumsy idiot, and a child correcting those things. That's a good
tracks.
It's a good team, yeah.
Good tracks.
One such disaster raising the ire of Muldoon. As a big man confronts Ernest, only some quick thinking on his part and a helping hand from the kids saves his hide. However, Ernest must tread lightly for fear of the revenge-minded Muldoon. Ernest puts his team through his own comic boot camp as they train for competition. He stresses the importance of being a team and having fun.
The team would start off taking several losses and being mocked by Muldoon's team until the kids eventually decide to stop showing up to take the losses.
After a humiliating defeat at the hand of Muldoon's squad and then several more losses, the team loses faith in Ernest. They decide to forfeit the remaining matches. Afterwards, a dejected Ernest is finally cornered by Muldoon, who claims an embarrassing revenge as he makes fun of Ernest's team. Ernest defends his team, but is unable to defend himself. This becomes a rallying point for the team. They vow to finish the schedule. Computer nerd Jimmy comes to their rescue with a series of mathematical formulas that translate into successful wrestling moves.
That's where this becomes Moneyball.
With a new vigor in them, the team began a long streak of winning and qualifying for the championships, leading to what most would be looking forward to.
The team makes its way through the tournament and advances to the quarterfinals the next day. Ernest wants to do something to bolster his team's confidence before the next day's competition. He comically blunders backstage at a WWF pay-per-view event to ask the wrestlers to talk to the kids.
Ernest would be introducing the kids to the wrestlers and trying to talk the WWE guys into advising his young team.
After causing great havoc, the WWF stars agree, mostly to get Ernest out of their hair. The wrestlers talk to the kids and give them pointers and motivation, perhaps a little too much motivation. The kids take things a little too far and adopt the same types of costumes and personas as the pros.
This part sounds pretty great, and I'm almost positive they would have some kid come out with a shaved head, black vest, and drinking 2 juice boxes.
So the next day, the team wins its first match and ends up facing Muldoon's team for the championship. It's all even going into the last match. During the warm-up, however, Ernest's best wrestler is injured and unable to continue.
With everyone on the team down or having competed already, it comes down to Muldoon's own son having to join the fray in the final match.
The referee points out Jimmy's name on the team roster. He must wrestle or the team will forfeit the championship. Jimmy's reluctant to wrestle until he overhears his father put him down to his team. That'll do it. Ernest tells Jimmy that he doesn't have to prove anything to anyone. Jimmy decides to compete. He bravely climbs into the ring with his thick eyeglasses duct taped to his headgear.
Funny.
Jimmy gamely tries to make a match of it, but his computer formulas aren't working. Muldoon yells for his wrestler to make quick work of the match. Muldoon's wrestler executes a quick series of moves and takes command.
Very Karate Kid.
Yeah.
Right?
Sweep the leg. As Jimmy is about to be pinned, he looks over to Ernest. Ernest is concerned and urges him to stay down and protect himself. Jimmy then looks towards his father. Muldoon is consumed with winning as he urges on his wrestler. A determined look comes over Jimmy's face. He summons all his strength and breaks free. Something comes over him, and he resorts to surprising roughhouse pro-style tactics, almost like a miniature version of Blackjack Muldoon as seen in the earlier filmed highlights.
Makes sense. It's his son, right?
Encouraged by his cheering teammates, Jimmy quickly finishes off his opponent, and the referee raises his arm in victory. He's mobbed by his friends and hailed as a hero, only Ernest holds back. He asks what came over Jimmy. As Jimmy struggles to explain, Ernest tells him that sometimes it's better to lose than to win by doing something you don't really believe in. They're interrupted by Muldoon, who tells Jimmy how proud he is of him. Jimmy looks at Ernest, then asks his father if he would have been proud of him if he lost. After a stunned moment, Muldoon breaks down. He tells Jimmy he was wrong and will change if given a chance, but he truly is proud of how Jimmy has turned around. Jimmy tells his father to thank Ernest. Muldoon turns to Ernest. In a manner similar to their first confrontation, he advances. He grabs Ernest in a giant bear hug. It's quickly evident, however, that this time it is out of gratitude, not anger. He releases Ernest, and together they hoist Jimmy onto their shoulders, and surrounded by both teams, they charge off to celebrate.
This is honestly not nearly as scary of a concept as I originally thought it would be. The WWF involvement is pretty minimal, and it really is just there to add to the wackiness of Ernest's coaching tactics with the kids. And surprisingly, I don't hate the script. It's a goofy little kids movie and has all the laughs and story beats needed to teach nice lessons and keeping the attention of the younger audience. This movie sounds pretty solid, and I'm kind of sad that it didn't actually get made. When I was a kid, two things that I did more than anything else was watch wrestling and watch Ernest movies and television shows. I was an absolute nut for this stuff. I would go to the video store. I would usually pick up an Ernest movie and a wrestling tape. So uncovering this stuff has been really special for me, and I want to thank Grapplevision for letting me narrate this. And I want to thank you for watching the video. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're trying to get up to 100,000 subscribers on this channel. I think that this channel is one of the best yet kind of undiscovered gems on YouTube. So it's kind of a shame that it hasn't hit that major milestone of getting that 100,000 subscriber number, whatever that means. Most importantly, we hope you enjoy the content on this channel. We got a lot of cool stuff coming, so it's worth subscribing regardless. I'm Mr. Hartgrave from Parts Unknown. I have a YouTube channel myself. You might see some links up here on the screen right now. If you want to go check out my channel as well, you're always welcome. And until next time, keep digging.